Make HR easy with MyHR. Go to myhr.works to find out how.
So the good news on Wellington is there were no new cases, but today is, at least in part according to Hipkins anyway, the day as far as results go. More than 7,000 tests processed so far. Director General of Health Ashley Bloomfield back with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
What numbers do you have for us?
Well, what I can say is we haven't been notified of any positive test results overnight. We know there were a lot of tests taken in Wellington yesterday, and we'll have the exact number, within the next hour or two. But so far, so good in that we haven't been notified about any positive tests. If there is a positive test, we get a heads up pretty quickly, so that's good.
Hipkins was suggesting today would be the day, so it's not really the day, seeing it's zero.
Well, today, the tests from the last couple of days, as those flow in through the day, and, today's really those people who perhaps were exposed at one of those places on Sunday, today and yesterday, they will have been tested, so we'll be watching for those results. The labs know to process them as quickly as possible and get those results to us so we can act quickly if there is a positive result. It's important that those people at those locations of interest are tested at the right time, and that's day 5.
How many 0 days do you need to pull the trigger back to level 1?
Well, we'll be watching the number of tests, whether we've got any positive tests. Obviously, our wastewater testing, we're expecting further results from that later today, so that's an important signal. It's very sensitive now. ESR have kept developing that, so that's an important part of our information. So the important thing here is that the rest of Wellington, even those who aren't being tested, keeps following those alert level 2 instructions around, gathering size, wearing masks, and just, laying low really for the next few days.
Have you overreacted?
Oh, I don't think anyone's saying we've overreacted. I think alert level 2 was the right thing to do, and we've got this person who came with the virus to Wellington, visited a number of places, and many of those the sorts of places that if they were going to infect someone, it could well have happened. They were crowded, they were closed spaces, and so we've taken, I think, exactly the right level of action.
But we've had this discussion before, haven't we, in the Auckland, some of the Auckland outbreaks where you've had 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and it just became embarrassing.
Well, I don't think it's embarrassing. I think it's reassuring, and that's what we're looking for. The key thing here, and we've seen this from Victoria recently, is to act early, decisively, and get ahead of it. And you can see what happens in a number of countries, over the last few weeks and month or two, that if you don't act early and this, particularly this variant, which is more transmissible, gets away, then it's much harder to get under control.
When you say this variant, you don't know that yet, do you? You're working on the assumption. Is that right still?
Yeah, we're working on the assumption, and it is taking longer to get the whole genome sequencing. And actually, the reason for that is that the staff who run the lab in New South Wales are not well. It's not that they've got COVID, but they're not well. So it's not that our colleagues across the Tasman are being slow. They're usually very rapid with these results.
Why don't you take a Berejiklian type approach, which is to keep the place open until you know differently, as opposed to this abundance of caution thing that you seem to favour?
Well, actually, we are still pretty open, and if you look at the restrictions in place in New South Wales, it's all but an alert level 3 equivalent in New Zealand. I mean, they've got compulsory use of masks in a whole range of places, limits on gathering size in people's homes. So it's a pretty constrained environment in New South Wales. Just because they're not calling it a lockdown doesn't mean that they're not really acting quite decisively.
How much thought are you giving, related but different subject, Air New Zealand crew, high-risk destinations don't need to do MIQ if they've got the double jab now. Morrison out of Australia said yesterday that he wants people travelling interstate with the double jab. In other words, they get a different deal from people who are unjabbed. Are you giving thought to that?
Well, we don't have an interstate issue here in New Zealand, obviously, but... Look,
but in a lockdown, for example?
Yeah, in a lockdown, not giving too much thought to that. I mean, vaccination status is important around people's, whether individuals are protected and whether they're likely to transmit the virus, but it's not 100%. And so, as we've seen with this person that came over from Sydney, they had one dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine some weeks ago, so they would have developed some immunity. But, vaccination is just one factor to consider when people are moving around. We want to know if there are cases around, and that's the most important thing.
What about MIQ, coming back from overseas? When are you giving that some thought?
Yeah, we're definitely doing active work on that. But again, it's vaccination status. It's what vaccine have they used? Is it one we're confident in? It's where have they come from? Is there COVID in the community where they've come from? how have they got here? So, and also, of course, there's a role for pre-departure testing. So all these things really are part of a package we're looking at.
Appreciate your time. Ashley Bloomfield with us this morning.
The biggest artists in music and all their greatest hits. Gold, streaming everywhere on iHeartRadio. Just search Gold FM.
Make HR easy with MyHR, the cost-effective outsourced solution for New Zealand employers. On-call expert advice combined with powerful time-saving software. Fixed monthly fee, no lock-in contract. Go to myhr.works for more.